So we're going to talk to Raquel Ashton, and it's to do with your passion, what you're passionate about. So
Yes.
over to you.
Okay. Well, I have several passions. I think my first passion as a very young child was music, and I remember I think I was about 2 or 3 years old. I was sitting on the sofa, and when certain music would come on, I would just stand up and just move to the music, and I felt so free at the time. Um, that my parents decided to take me to dance classes. And so um, I started out my first dance classes. I remember crying through my very first ballet classes. I missed my mum, but that became a vocation. I then went on. We moved to London, and I trained there, and I went to professional ballet school. I'm half Spanish and half English, and before my third year at professional ballet school, I was fortunate enough to be offered a contract in a company in Spain, in Barcelona. So that for me was perfect because I was in Spain, I'm half Spanish, and I was getting to do what I really love to do. So I was there, and I worked for several years as a professional dancer. When I came back, I I became a teacher. Yes, I got married and thought that the traveling that that is involved with the dancing side of things wasn't really great for the relationship. So I became a teacher, and I've been teaching ballet since. Um, that has always been something I've enjoyed doing. I love people, so working with both adults and children has been very it was been a big eye opener, really. And I love tuning into people and finding ways of getting them to attain what it is they want to attain, either through the physique or through the mind as well, because the mind, emotions, and the bodies are connected. So I've found it incredibly interesting and very encompassing. Um, then there are more passions that are coming that came from there. I don't just stick to one. There's always something else, and I've always loved nature, and it's always been a beautiful contrast to working inside a dance studio. Well, from being inside a dance studio to being outside in nature, in the fresh air, amongst the trees, the wind, the birds, animals. Um, and there's a lot of connection. Sometimes, I walk in nature and I look at the way a weeping willow moves, and I connect it to a dance move. And then you might walk past, there's an oak tree, and you have its strength and its static strength. And you can think of something that we do in class that relates to that as well. So in many ways, it is connected. However, last year, I discovered a couple of other passions. Um, I it was what we just gone into lockdown, and I very much went inwards in a very good way. Just a lot of um, soul searching, if you like, and just going within more and more. And after a few weeks of being completely locked down, I thought, well, I need to get out a little bit, and I started to go for walks and just up the road further on and then back again. And every time I passed this field, I felt I wanted to go into the field, but I thought, well, it looks a little bit quiet, and I don't know what's beyond that field. um, I'll just stick to the road, I'll just stick to the road. And then one day I said, no, enough, I'm going into this field. So I walked into the field, and I walked through, and it led to another field, very expansive field. So I walked through the expansive field, and I loved the feeling of not knowing, being lost slightly in nature. Um, that led to another field, And I remember walking through it, and I remember in the middle was a hollow tree. And I was thinking how amazing this tree is, so alive, yet it's completely hollow on the inside. Um, and that led to a different field. This is now the fourth field, and that sort of had a meandering path with a lot of plants and flowers around. You had to sort of push through. And then I got to the fifth field, and in that field, it was again very expansive, were a good 12 horses just there. And I initially thought that, is this somebody's land that I'm on? But there was a public footpath there. And I was observing these horses, and I've always loved animals. Always felt very connected to dogs and birds, and I've loved everything else. And there was just one log on this in this field. So I sat on the log and I was just observing these horses, and they looked so peaceful. They were way in the distance, and a part of me, they sort of spoke to a part of me. I could feel my heart opening just by being in their presence. And so I thought, wow, I found this really wonderful place. Come back tomorrow. So the following day, I went back and I had my headphones, and I thought, I'm going to do a meditation here. And as I walked into the field the second time I went, it was a couple of days later. It was a beautiful, beautiful spring afternoon. The sun was shining, and there was a fox running around amongst the horses. There's a fox, and on the other side there were geese, and I was thinking, there's a fox and there were geese. Those geese going to be okay? But the geese were close to the river. They were obviously fine. And so I sat on the log and I put my headphones on and I closed my eyes, and I started to do a meditation. It involved some heart math. I stayed in my heart, and it was a short meditation. I had my eyes closed, and then when I opened my eyes, the horses had gathered round, and they were just watching very intently, head sort of semi down, watching very intently. I had two foxes that were, one looked like it was asleep, the other one was just semi awake, lying by my feet. And this amazing butterfly just just fluttering around with beautiful colors of red. And in that moment when I opened my eyes, I mean, it was blissful with my eyes closed, but when I opened my eyes, the level of joy that I felt was pretty indescribable. I felt just in awe, just in awe. The foxes, I stirred. The foxes just stood up and they ran. They just left the field. They went out through one of the gates, and the horses just stepped back and went back to grazing. But the butterfly stayed. The butterfly stayed, and I thought, my gosh, they obviously feel the energy when you're connected to something else, or disconnected maybe from here and connected in here, the heart. I was I walked back home in absolute awe, and I knew that I'd found something rather special there. And I thought, this is my little secret go-to place. This is amazing. So the third time I went, I was on the phone to a friend of mine on the headphones, and I wanted to finish the call because I wanted to see if I could connect in some way again with the horses. And I was there, and they were on the other side of the field, and I said, look, I've got to go because I'm with the horses and I want to connect with them. And it sort of sounded like an odd thing to say. I'll call you back later. And he said, really, you're choosing a horse over me? And I said, no, honestly, I've got to go. And this time I stayed standing, and I started to just disconnect from here and connect to my heart. And I was practicing some heart math, lock-in, and sort of going into sort of a meditative state where they were all grazing, but there was one horse, a white horse, and she looked up very sharply and looked straight at me from a distance. And I was wondering if it was the energy she could feel or the fact that there was a person in the field. Um, and she started to walk towards me. Now, I I'm not familiar with horses, and I was at that time I was thinking, are they territorial? You know, is the horse going to suddenly like bolt at me? You know, where could I run? You know, there's the gate over there. There's a fence here. I could dive under the fence into the next field, and I was thinking of a plan B. But she was very gentle, and I by the time she came close to me, I became quite nervous. And there was another horse that came behind her, a dark brown horse that seemed like a teenager. It wasn't just she wasn't yet an adult, but neither was she a foal. She was a young horse, was a much sort of smaller boned and quite very delicate, beautiful horse. And this white horse just came. She just stood in front of me, and I went to stroke her, thinking, you know, does she? And she pulled her face away, so she didn't want to be stroked. And I tried to stay in my heart and open, and she put her face in the center of my chest. Here, she put her head in the center of my chest, and I was a little frightened, but at the same time, I was in awe. I was thinking, can she feel when somebody is out of their head and in their heart more? Can she obviously she can feel it. I could feel my heart like just beating out of the chest, you know, because I just didn't really know what was going to happen next. And I think she sensed that I was fearful, so she moved away, and I just stood very still. And she sort of walked around me and sort of grazed around me, and I stayed where I was. And I turned to face the other way. I was facing another field, and she sort of came up next to me. So we were both facing the same way, and she was just playing with my hair. She was sort of looking at the blouse I was wearing, my bag, and my trousers, just sort of with her mouth, just playing with them, you know, just sort of feeling them. And then I put my hand underneath her face and just held the side of her face, and she brought her cheek to touch mine, and it was just a beautiful. That moment was
Fine.
absolutely, for me, there was such unity there. In that time, it was beautiful. And then she continued to graze, and I was wow. And then I left the field, and I thought, I've got to come back. I'm coming back here. But as I left the field, I remembered I had a calendar, and it was a unicorn calendar, but it was a beautiful unicorn calendar in that the artwork, it wasn't, you know, like the sort of children's My Little Pony type unicorn. It was they were like beautiful horses and with images. And the image of the calendar for that month, it was May of last year, was almost the same. There was a lady and the horse, and she's holding the horse's head, and they're cheek to cheek, and she's holding like a heart pendant in her hand. And I, you know, I thought that symbolizes maybe the fact that I was very much thinking about. And it wasn't until I left the field, I went to the next field, I went through the gate, and I thought, gosh, because every morning I'd make a point to stop and look at that image, thinking, isn't that beautiful, you know, that image, you know. And there I was with this horse, and inadvertently I'd put my hand in the same position, and we were standing in the same position. So my adventures with the horses continued throughout the summer. And some days I'd get up at 7 and I'd just go and observe. And one day it was early morning, and I didn't want them to see me now, sort of hidden by the gate. And they seemed to almost be in a meditative state. They were all very still in the middle. And it was like some sort of communication between them. And then there was a marked change in the energy, and then they all went about grazing. Some moved to the other side of the field. So I was very intrigued by that. And then I started to look at their reaction when I'm in my heart, and then how differently they behave when I'm in my head. So after seeing that, I went in and I walked to the middle of the field, and I just felt my heart opening, and I stayed in my heart. And I closed my eyes, and I just really felt expansion coming from the heart. And when I sort of opened my eyes, they were all gathered around as if they were in the same meditative state. It's as if they were in the zone, except for one that was further back, and he wasn't quite sure. He was backing away from it and then coming up closely, then backing away. He was a little nervous, but the rest of them were there in this zone. So I thought to myself, what will happen if I move into my head? So I moved into my head, and I thought, right, so when I get back, I've got to do the washing, and I've got to do this, and I've got to trim back the hedges, and and then as soon as I got into my head, they broke out of it, and they just started to graze. And I thought, interesting. So I then went back into my heart. It took me a little while. Went back into my heart, and they did the same. They stopped, they looked up, and they didn't come too close, but they kind of got closer, and they were all in that same sort of meditative state. So that to me was pretty amazing. My passion is going there and connecting with nature. It's a very open field, but there's something very special about it. I mean, we're in Surrey, but we could be in Hampshire or Wiltshire. It has that feeling of expanse about it. It has that, yes, you know, when you go to Hampshire, it's the expanse, isn't it, that you sense the space. And in Wiltshire as well, parts of Wiltshire, it's such an expansive space, and it's having that so close to home was quite, I thought, was really special. Spending time there with them and being in a completely meditative state, in the presence of these majestic, exquisite beings, moves me in a very big way, in a very special way. It's, to me, it feels quite magical. To go within in a place like that, and then to have these beautiful beings respond in the way that they respond, that has become my passion. And even, you know, if I'm having a bad day and I think, oh, I just don't feel, I want to go out, I've not had the best day, I just want to, my soul says, go. And I do. I just throw on a jacket and I go. And when I'm there, I feel like I'm home. Something struck me. I don't know if this is of any relevance, but you know, when we meditate, or when we want to manifest something, sometimes it, you know, we don't feel it's happening, and we get, oh gosh, this is ever going to happen. And they taught me a really beautiful lesson about that. And that is, when I go to the field and I climb over the mire and I think, oh, the horses, hey guys, I'm here. Hey, hi. They just ignore me. And and then there's the ego takes a bit of a okay. And then I think, I change my energy. And then you think, who am I being? You know, and I go back into my heart, into myself, and just connect with love. That's all. Connect with love. And then they gravitate. So that's when they really want to be with you, or with me, or with anyone, I would imagine. And that is a lesson we could they teach. Well, they
Mm.
taught me so many things, but that is a very valuable lesson. I love them. I'm passionate about them.
Mhm.
What they showed me in that at that time was that even if you are a little stressed, you know, stay in that place of being as coherent as you could be, you know, staying in your heart and staying open and staying in that present state of this moment right now is actually perfect. The mind was trying to get in the way. That was the fear. That was the mind getting in the way. But I stayed in the heart. I stayed in the heart, more than this. And this sometimes took over a little bit, but then I constantly come back to this place. And they showed me that you can take that state with you anywhere. You know, sometimes things happen that are quite shocking, or and it throws you off course a little bit. But as long as you're aware of that, you can bring yourself back again. And they taught me a lot about that. And they taught me the difference between when I was in my head and when I was in my heart.